So I think this panel is going to be really sweet and conversational. In lieu of having the artists each do a kind of unique presentation of their own work, we're going to use each of the questions that we've prepared kind of as a group together in conversations before this to introduce each of their works and then bring their work into conversation with each other's. There's a lot of themes that we discovered that they all have in common that we're super excited to unpack together. And yeah, just really looking to maintain the kind of warmth and friendship that's already existing between these folks. But before we do that, I will do some short introduction bios, just noting that these, 150 words barely even scratch the surface of these amazing and nebulous human beings and artists. But I hope you can get a little bit more of that expanded sense throughout the conversation. So first off, we have Clementine Bordeaux, who is an enrolled member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe and grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Clementine's an assistant professor of history of art and visual culture at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And she's fortunate to work closely with Racing Magpie in Rapid City, South Dakota, which is a community-based art space that serves the Lakota and Dakota Nation, regional artists and cultural bearers. And as a community member, artist, and scholar, their goal is to work with and for Indigenous communities. And second up, we have Rachel Martin, who's a Tlingit artist based in Queens. She's an artist and the Gotchman Family Collection's creative director and curator. Martin primarily works on paper, but also in painting, sculpture, assemblage, and in murals. And her work explores generational forms of tradition, intersectional feminism, and Indigenous sovereignty through the use of humor and playfulness to ensure her ancestors' stories are told from a multidimensional place. And of course, Eric Paul Riege is a Dene weaver and fiber artist working in collage, durational performance, installation, woven sculpture, and wearable art. Using weaving as both means and metaphor to tell hybrid tales that interlace stories from Dene spirituality with his own interpretations and cosmology. He understands his artworks as animate and mobile. His practice pays homage and links him to generations of weavers in his family that aids him in generating spaces of sanctuary. And I would love to start first with a question for Rachel, really one that you stimulated in a previous conversation that we had, which I think is a really fruitful place to talk about your work, and also the others had a lot of really interesting things to add. So can you talk about how your work is engaging both literally and figuratively the idea of masking and unmasking? And then after, we'll open it up to the others to talk about how that relates to adornment, performance, decoration, and even drag.
That's such a heavy start, but it's also super good. When it comes to my work, a lot of it is involving a collage mask that is overlaid on a human body and a younger person. A lot of the times it's a woman, but I don't necessarily gender my forms. But the collage mask over it is often, it's a dialogue between generations, and the imagery that I'm using is thousands of years old. So really it's important for generations to have a discussion. And the masking and unmasking is multidimensional in a lot of ways when it comes to having cultural knowledge that you share with the art world, and then cultural knowledge that you keep to yourself. And we were just having a serious conversation in our lunch, which was
so serious.
Yes, it was very serious. But it's really neat because there's so many different ways of having these dialogues, and I'm coming from a place where there's a lot, you want to withhold a lot of it, and I think for me, as a person coming from a different generation, I want to open the invite to a lot of other people, because I think that's what ensures that these stories are continuing to be kept. And also when it comes to blood quantum and who's invited to the table is really something that is not a part of the art world that I want to see going forward. I want to see an open invitation to how beautiful our cultures are. And I think that that's super important. And I think that Eric Paul does that very well, and then Clementine does that. So we're all working towards that world. So I love that we're all at a panel together.
Yeah, I totally see that. Like am I talking loud? Okay. Like,
I didn't even notice.
yeah, like I always think of how in Dene making, sometimes there's intentional mistakes when the art is maybe for sale or for commercial use, and so things will be disguised and changed and morphed when it's for the purpose of art viewing. Like Shandine said in the previous panel, that in Dene there's no word for art. The closest thing we have is drawing. And so yeah, having what you share be protected by also maybe disguising and masking, and like I like to play with language, and so in some of my titles they'll be all intentionally misspelled words in English and Dene, and so yeah, I think that's important about keeping for us by us FUBU, to protect that, but then also wanting to like you said, share how beautiful these stories and creation stories and songs are to us, and it's important for those to exist beyond, beyond our borders.
I'll go into this specific one because it does, definitely within Indigenous bodies, it's not something that they don't, it's like a very, with Northwest Coast art, I'm Tlingit, I think that's been said, but it's usually a lot of bodies that are in this perfect symmetry, which is form line. It's very rigid, and so the idea of welcoming feminine bodies that are imperfect because feminine bodies aren't always in perfect symmetry. Male bodies aren't either, but in Northwest Coast art, that's always what I've seen. So I love the idea of bringing softer, playful, and bending rules, but not breaking them, but bending them. And so that's really like this work was super playful, but you look at it, you don't know that you're doing it when you're doing it. If you're a good artist, you're not thinking this is what I'm trying to do, you just see it after. And you're just happy that happened. And I think that like that's definitely something that there's very heavy movements that you're making that you don't know you're doing, and it's really neat. So after this, I was like, oh, I love that she's there. And I want to just touch on also that the pink is often associated with like Barbie or Western feminism. And for me, in Alaska, you see the innards of fish and hide and blood and like this. It's so beautiful, and it's a very taboo part of Western culture is blood and guts and vulnerability, really. So it's a beautiful part of Northwest Coast world that isn't in the art, and so I love being able to introduce that because just having a different idea of concept of what feminism and pink is associated with is really exciting to me. So if you see this color pink in my work, you're like, it's blood and it's guts and it's like, and it's not like this pretty thing. It's really exciting, and I love that part. So. Yay!
And that's kind of masking too. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. And having double meanings behind something that your people can see and other people feel is also a, what's that word when it's like, I don't know what it is.
Like somatic or embodied?
It starts with a C, but never mind. Move on. It'll come to me.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that about the pink because I love pink, but I'm like, oh, is it too girly? But now I'm like, no, it's blood and guts. And I think I'm coming from a Northern Plains context where I think all the things that are like taboo in more civilized places, because I just moved back to California, I'm like, God, I can't talk about the blood and guts anymore in California, right? I'm like, oh, we harvest buffalo, and they're like, oh my God, So I think that's also part of the masking, and that also makes me think about like the masks we wear in different spaces and the way we have to navigate sometimes putting on different personas. At lunch, like I was sitting alone at my own table, but I realized I was like, I'm listening, but I'm just like over here, being by myself, because sometimes we need that space. And and that the cult of the Western world, whether that's academia or the art world, often wants just extraction, extraction, extraction. So I think that's one thing that's really important, and what I'm enjoying about being in conversation with you two especially, and experiencing the performance last night and the exhibition, is that there are things that are specific to your context as a Dene person. And I might not know those things, and that's great, and it should be that way. We shouldn't have to always be revealing. And right, in an academic sense, we could talk about what Audra Simpson theorizes as refusal. But I think it's also just I don't have to tell you I'm refusing either, and that's okay. And we have that ability to do that now, which it's fun too. And we could also do it in a fun way. It doesn't always have to be in an angry, even though I wake up with rage every day. It doesn't have to be in an angry way. It could be in a fun way too. But yeah, I think that's part of when I think about masking. And this piece is so beautiful, by the way. It really evokes a lot of that, I think, what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, the performance idea is so, with masking and unmasking, we could talk about it for hours, because there's so much about, yes, performative ideas of indigeneity and what you have to, also masking rage and putting it into hey, it's fine, because I definitely, as a co-curator for the collection, Gotchman Collection, I'm in direct dialogue with important museum directors on a fairly regular basis, and those conversations could be really heavy, and I have to turn them into making them feel that they're coming here. And it's just an interesting part of performance, but also I learned so much about how to talk to people and make them feel invited to something that's super beautiful. But yeah, as an artist, it's not something I ever thought I would see, but it's important for artists to have these hard conversations with the people that are influencing the art world. And I didn't want to do it at all for a long time, and I'm nope, I'm stepping up. And artists have to do that on a regular basis, is step up into roles that you didn't anticipate. And you can make it fun, or you can be I'm crying and I'm so upset. And I get, if anyone in here knows me, I get mad really fast. But I'm also super happy and super excited about all the artists. They're doing such beautiful things.
Yeah, when I think to the end of your question, that was a bit about drag, and I think about performance and wearing a literal mask, and drag queens have said before that you're not doing drag unless it's uncomfortable. So sometimes getting in regalia and not being able to see and having to rely on your other senses is a form of entering a mindset of performance, I feel. But then also I think about the way that my body starts to move when I'm masked. It acts as armor, and the way we adorn our bodies in a lot of ways, whether that's through our jewelry or regalia or shoes, all our cowboy boots. Sorry, Clementine. We left her out of the group text. Just kidding.
They're in California.
She has the stomping boots, actually.
But yeah, I love that you called it my sissy run in performance. But I was it came out of my body, but it was because I had this armor on where I felt more comfortable in my own skin. But then on the other end of it, it's how do you mask maybe your femininity or your queerness or your flamboyantness when you enter a space like the airport in Texas, where I'm always at. And I'm oh my God, I should not be wearing my Spice Girl shirt right now. That's literally what I thought at the Dallas airport, because I was I need to mask my queerness, and I need to butch it up to exist and to feel safe and to not feel something's gonna happen. And that's the level of performance within itself of how you just exist in the world and what it means to be real or realness. Yeah. It's dependent on the spaces that you navigate. Yeah, in the airport, I realized that I live in a bubble of beautiful, creative, cool, queer, people, and I'm oh my God, some of these people are nuts. But yeah.
As like a highly police space, the airport becomes a place that feels,
Very masky. Yeah, that's really, and I feel like there's so much more to say, and I'm sure we'll continue to pick it out. And yeah, just noting that I have all of your images, so if there's one that y'all want to reference as we're talking, just let me know. But I think that this was a really powerful one because I was just thinking about what you said, Clementine, about waking up with rage, but then making it fun, and I feel like this kind of, I'm reading that in this.
And bending around
Yeah.
rules. There's a lot of rules in all of crossing and just bending around them, not necessarily trying to break something, but like, no, moving with water and moving with what you have, what's actually happening. Because there's ideals, especially with art, and you feel like you need to take all of it on in this one piece of work, like I'm gonna make this masterpiece, and you're like, no, it's just like move around the barriers that you have presently and try to move towards what you want.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. I would love to ask you, Clementine, a question. I would love to hear more about the work that you do with Racing Magpie, if you would share that with us. Your role there, the mission, and the kind of impact of the space. I read that the idea of being a good relative is one of the values of the space. And that's also a part of the work that you made for the exhibition that you did, I think, with your sister, the responsibilities and obligations, understanding Mitakoe Oyasin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to hear more about both that space, but then kind of expanding into that place of we're all family and how that was misappropriated.
Yeah, so I have the fortune of being a collaborator for Racing Magpie, which is they're artist studios, a gallery, community space, and I don't know if this is public yet, but they're starting a capital campaign to expand out to create more studios that will be geared towards artists with families and women, because right now all the artists we have are like our uncles. We love our uncles, but we want to support other artists too. But so my sister is a co-founder. Her and her husband started Racing Magpie, and I basically just get voluntold to do whatever they need me to do. Which I'm really lucky that I have such a great collaborative partnership with my sister, who's older, by the way, and the little sister. People always ask who's older, but first big project we collaborated on was responsibilities and obligations, which is understanding Moderator Oyasin. So Moderator Oyasin is a term in Lakota, Dakota language that means we are all related, or all my relations. And in I'm such an academic, God. But in 2016, the Rapid City Police Department released a police vehicle, which is still in operation, that had Moderator Oyasin on the cop car. And it's still, we see it. I will have an article hopefully coming out about it. And we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of this cop car. And so we're my sister and I and Layli Long Soldier were having this conversation about what it means to appropriate our cultural language, our cultural iconography into spaces. So we created an exhibition in response to that, where we interviewed Lakota and Dakota women from the region about what Moderator Oyasin means, and what does kinship mean, and what does being a good relative mean, and how do we practice these good relational practices through creative practice. And then that eventually led to this collaboration. This is the exhibition that's up right now at Racing Magpie, and it's called Ordinary Presence. So just how it's between myself, my sister Mary Bordeaux, Layli Long Soldier, Gracie Horn, and Melina Tools, and we spent about 3 years talking with each other, talking with individuals about this expression of ikuche, which means like everyday. You're an everyday person. You're embodying humility in particular ways. So we ended up creating these pieces. My sister did all of the moccasins, which we all wore before the exhibition. So she beaded a pair of moccasins for each of us, and we wore them. mine also, when you said you fell in the pool with your boots, like mine got rained out at ceremony. They were like, my tent flooded and they were literally just like floating in the tent on top of the rainwater, but they survived. My sister did a great job. And then I created 2 dresses, regalia, and my pieces are all from reclaimed fabric that I had collected over time, and also I'm a Cancer, so I like hoard things, and I had a box full of like birthday cards, graduation cards, holiday cards from like the last 10 years, and I created pieces from those cards. So it was just this embodiment of what we meant, our everyday interactions with family and community. So that's kind of where a lot of my creating and my collaborating is just really in those everyday exchanges with our relatives, with our community, and sometimes getting it wrong and being able to be told that like, oh no, that's not how it is, and then being like, okay, how do we have this conversation to learn more?
Yeah, I feel like if others have reflections related to that idea, I think we talked a little bit about how that the idea of being a good relative showed up in some of each of your practices. If you wanted to.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about the title of the whole symposium, or convening curation with care, like getting to work with Thea for the past 3 years. Like, you've come into my home and you've met my family, and I've been to your home and I've hung out with your dog and know your and so like there is a kinship that is special when you're working with a new person from completely different backgrounds, but like having that important relationship building process to know, to trust, and we trust each other. And so in my experiences with working with different curators, that's like what I as a maker and someone who lives with my family, and the fingerprints of my relatives and extend from my ancestors, and so that's like literally embedded within the work, both figuratively and like I can tell the difference between my mom's stitch and like my stitch, and it's like my thing that I get to know when I'm like looking at the work, and like so I can see my mom's hand there. So it's important to be in relation with others, of course, but then like with my work, it's like important to have the touch of others, which is why I welcome audiences to move through the space, but then also gently handle and caress everything, and then now we're collaborators together.
Well, I'm definitely, since I live in New York City and my family lives in Alaska, being a good relative is really something that I was doing from afar, and I'm learning Tlingit Yucatangi, which is the Tlingit language, so I'm connected on a weekly basis with elders, and we also don't have a word for art in Tlingit Yucatangi, so that is a conversation all the time, because art is just an extension of everything that you do as a human, and maybe not even as a relative. Being a good relative is like being a good human, and so your art is just something that you're good at. That's your gift, and you should follow that gift that you have to do to follow the value systems that we've had for thousands of years, since time immemorial, which is really neat but it's also not something that, it doesn't mean you're replicating what your ancestors did. It means that you are moving forward with what is, what are your experiences, your specific experiences. So being a good relative means that I'm in conversation with my relatives and elders, but actually just being surrounded by people that are smarter than you is always really, and not being intimidated by it, by being like in relationship with them and not feeling intimidated by them knowing more than you, and not extractive either, but like stepping up and offering what you have. So that's my interpretation of a good relative, but
Yeah, one thing that you said too about like art just being like embedded, like I feel like when I've been asked before, like how is it being an artist, like how are you supported by your community as an artist? And I was like, well, everyone back home is an artist. Like who made your jewelry? Oh, my cousin made it. Like, you know, like everyone is inherently somehow connected to a form of like making and storytelling through our hands. And so yeah, it's like I kind of going back to with what Shondine was saying previous about like being a native artist versus an artist who happens to be native. I'm like, that's strange when you get lumped into that category of like being a queer artist or native artist. But like even further than that, sometimes I think it's weird when like everyone in my family is an artist in their own right, and they you know, they share and we share together. It's like language. I've always said that I am lucky that I get to be a student to the material forever, and the material is just an extension of where it's coming from. Material is nomadic, and it moves. And yeah, so being a listener, like you said, is being in the room of people smarter than you and allowing them to share, like that's always being a good relative too, is to be a sponge to absorb. And I'm lucky that I come from a family of all fiber artists, and so yeah, these guys know what they're doing before my mind does because of my relatives.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, no, and I think that's like a really good segue. I would love to talk a little bit more about the way that you're thinking about material, and it's kind of the life cycle of the materials, its past lives, its kind of present aliveness in the ways that you're working with it, and then the ways that you appreciate the future of it, the future possibilities of it. Yeah, so I would love for you to speak a little more about that.
In the exhibition on like the wall label at the bottom, I said thank you whose hair and skin is woven in, and by that I was thinking about the extension of like material being nomadic and like where it comes from. Who herded maybe the sheep, and who sheared it, and who washed the wool, then who spun it. Maybe it was the same person, maybe it's a family of people, maybe it was myself. I think about that, all those fingerprints and the oil of people's fingers being woven in, but then also like if I'm buying something like mass produced, like at a craft store or Walmart. Walmart in Gallup is also the town center, town square. So if you want to see everybody you know, go to Walmart. But yeah, like the people who work there and unpack the box and put it on the shelf, and the person who maybe walked through and put it in their cart and maybe put it back. And then also now working with different institutions, when the work is sent back to me, it's so beautifully handled and packaged by the installers. And I think about a blanket and the utilitarian use of a blanket. Sometimes it's for protection and for warmth, and that plastic acted as a blanket for the blankets. And so there's just so many hands that are involved in the process of making. And as I started to exhibit and spaces would want there to be stanchions, wouldn't want people to touch, I was like, why am I the last person that gets to end this material's journey? Like, this material has been moving and existing for so long, and there's so much memory in it. Why does it end with me? I'm like, it should never end with me. And so it's in dire need for the work to always be touched and handled. And so when I did the visit to the archive with Thea and Shondine and Terry 2.5 years ago, and seeing some of these objects that are tools, that are instruments, that are not, they're not static, they're just still. When we rest, we're still, but we're still breathing. And I'm like, these objects are still breathing. And so I consider everything I do like animate in that way. And so that's why I welcome touch, and I see the material as always growing through care and handle in that way.
Yeah, I put up this image here where we can see your weaving comb and the way that you decided to display it. And I think that relates to what you're talking about care and handle, and how you were kind of employing in a humorous way a critique of the way that institutions traditionally have cared for objects.
Yeah, like when you see native objects and regalia, it's always behind a glass case, or it's always underneath something. There's always a barrier where oftentimes these baskets are meant to carry. The jewelry is meant to be worn. The weaving comb is meant to be woven with. And so there's like so much insurance and like value placed upon these objects that are tools that my family has at home. And so I wanted to have it displayed like almost with like a lack of care by it just being taped on the wall, whereas the object that's underneath the glass case, like these objects are cousins, but because one is in this institution and incorrectly put in an archive. Thea shared earlier about the experience that I had where it was wrapped in a sample loom, and which basically meant that the object was buried alive. And we got to remove it, but like it was displayed or it was held in the archive improperly. And yeah, so I kind of wanted to have like a little tongue-in-cheek, like, let me just tape my comb on the wall.
I mean, I think that's part of a complex relationship that Natives have with the institutional museum world. Is it's a little bit of a dark idea that you have to, conserve these items because we're a dying people, basically, and that's the subtext for me. Instead of investing in the communities and the people that are making these work today and learning more about that, there's a lot of weavings that are in collections that. For us, with Chilkat weaving, I'm wearing a weaving right now, is something that has been reawakened that was asleep for about 100 years. So it's really beautiful to see that having access to those weaving techniques are not available to people. So you see them from the outside because that's what people think, but the weavers want to see what's on the back of it, and you want to touch where the imperfections are. Where did that whole how did you, so all of this stuff is really important in terms of what you're also saying. I work in paper, and there's a huge resistance by the commercial art world or the larger art world for me to make paintings or bronze. And I second-guessed myself for a long time because that's more valuable. And for me, it was like, no, it's about 100 years that is on the pigment of my colored pencils and the paper. And ideally, the next generation has this information, and new artists are carrying forward these same ideas, and it's not behind and not breathing behind these and just trying to hold on to it. You just want to see it keep moving forward, and so I really love that question in general. And my community also has issues with the fact that I work with paper because that's what you do before you actually make the work. And for me, I'm like, nope, this is it. And holding my ground on that, and listening to myself and listening to my own body and what feels right to me, because carvers are off that's the real work, and to me I'm like, nope, that's just not true. And having the ability to push back and use your own voice and your own body and listen to yourself is so important as a human in general, especially in a place where you have influence over a next generation, which you're always thinking about.
Yeah,
Is that my answer?
Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Clementine? Or?
Yeah, I also think there is something in, again, coming back to the everyday, but I just think about that, you're not doing more. And it's like, no, actually, this is just what I want to give to the world and have living, and operating. And I am a very messy person, and so I was just thinking about when you were like, oh, I taped that, I couldn't. We were in such, you're in such a rush when you're installing, and the dresses I made for the exhibition. It's leather, so it's really heavy, and we needed it to be. So I just ran to the store and got pool noodles. I know there's probably installers in the room that are rolling their eyes at pool noodles, but that's what I put in there because that's what we had at the time. And I just think we shouldn't be so precious with these things because they're also supposed to be held and loved and used. And exactly. And I think that's part of what I like. In a lot of my own research, I try to stay away from stuff that's in archives, settler archives or settler spaces, because I just want to see what we're making for each other, because that is really important to me. And we've already had a discussion about the earrings. It's like, who are you wearing? Yeah. And I think so many of us are probably my cousin made this, my uncle made this, my sister made these, So I think that's also part of that conversation of just what we're creating for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyday regalia. Like
Yeah.
the idea of wearing earrings is also just, it's everyday regalia is so important and so beautiful. I think Shandine was talking about that too. It's a really neat part of being a Native person is walking with the support of your people. And everyday regalia is also something that it shouldn't just be in ceremony.
Yeah.
And it definitely isn't just for performance or something.
Just to add to that, something that, so I'm wearing the silverwork I'm wearing, my Uncle John Nguyen goes and center, works with German silver and then stones that he finds from our region, mainly the Fairburn agate. And, but he always says, like, everything he's creating, it's like new material, but he's like, would my ancestors recognize this as something we would wear? And I'm like, and I think that's what we need to remind ourselves. Like, we were always evolving. We were always incorporating new materials. Like, we didn't have glass beads, but now that's such a thing to, like, mark you as a Native person. I mean, rolling up to the performance last night, I was like, oh, they're the Native earrings. Just follow the Native earrings, But, right, like, I think that, like, would our ancestors recognize these things and not have it historicized in a particular way? And I think that's what's so beautiful about your exhibition as well. Like, you can recognize these things, but it's also something new and exciting, and it isn't, like, take it, you're not taking it out of context. You see the continuum that practice is living on.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, like in the exhibition, the really large jewelry is exactly about that. Like one of our creation stories, there were these big gods and monsters that walked, roamed the earth before we came. And then once my grandmother told me that we wear our jewelry for our holy people to find us, and then hearing that story as a child, I'm like, well, how do they know what it looks like? They must have the same jewelry. So then as an adult I came back to that moment in my childhood and was like, I want to have that vision, that imagination come to life. So the series of works called Jaw Cloth for Yates. So it's earrings for the big gods, earrings for them. So that way, they can put them on and then they can pick us out of a crowd. That's what we were saying earlier in the room. We were like, the holy people were like, which one's the Navajo? Oh, the one with the turquoise and the TA. Yeah. Oh, and I also wanted to say, there's a bunch of pool noodles in my work.
Yeah, that's right. I was like, wait, realization, shared material.
Stand up, pool noodle.
I love it. That's amazing.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, guys. I think I wanted to maybe go back to Rachel's work for a second, but it definitely ties in with, I think, all of your work, to talk about the role of humor in your drawings, and I think you cited in your statement that it's something you're thinking about. So, how are you thinking about the use of humor and surprise in a way that I think it makes your work, endearing and arguably accessible sometimes, but also it's really powerful and subversive. And we will go back to your...
Yeah, this will be easier. The one right before that, and
This
her,
one?
yes.
Yeah, cool.
This is Killer Smile. My clan is Killer Whale. So that's our imagery is usually tied to intellectual property for specific clans. So this one is directly in a conversation with Robert Davidson, who's a Haida Northwest Coast artist that's very well known for bending Northwest Coast tradition with modernism. So this was my dialogue with him, but also, again, bringing in humor. Like, she has very subtle little nails that are pointy, and it's a very soft body. And I think a lot of the times Indigenous work feels intimidating to people that don't understand the imagery. And so the idea of humanizing it is really important to me. And I use humor in a lot of ways, in titles or in, a lot of time in titles, but also just in small little details. And with this one, it's also the little like these kind of thigh-high socks and stuff like that. But I love subtle ideas of humor when it comes to things and not overt. But
Yeah, I feel like Eric Paul too. I see it a lot in your work as well. I think that you do these kind of little wry, clever things, like the taping of the weaving comb, like the ways that you wrote some of your favorite songs on the museum case. So yeah, I wonder if that's something you're thinking about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just love to be silly. Making people laugh is so good, and like my community, my relatives at home are always cracking me up. So I'm like, let me steal these jokes and I can make other people crack up. Within the work, what we were talking about, like on the Zoom a couple of weeks ago, is like adding humor to the work, not for it to be laughed at, but to be like laughed with, and like you're taking what you do seriously, but maybe not yourself seriously, in making, and so. Yeah, I think like humor for me oftentimes is playing with like scale sometimes too. Like my earring is a really tiny version of my catalog. So like I like making small things really big and then big things really small. And I think there's something too like inherently like queer about that maybe too. Of taking a squash blossom, which is made out of silver, but then subverting it by making it the size of the room, but then using it, a complete opposite material that's like soft and synthetic. And yeah, I had a lot of fun making the video in the show because I was referencing different times of my life of like, I still watch QVC with my family. Like we'll just like watch it and have it on, but like advertising to me is so interesting, and so the video is called "Is It 3 Riege Trading and Supply." Material and supply, and so I made like a fake advertisement for the store for my material, and so I was thinking about it part like perfume commercial, but then part like QVC, like showing off the objects like as seen on TV, and so I like became, or my performance in the video like became that character, I suppose, of like selling the material, but then also like breaking it and then like lying to the audience but not knowing how it works, and like it like falling apart, but then it also being like fabulous. There was like all these layers that I was like thinking about. But yeah, come to the shop.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the Zoom, it's also like, because Grace is missing, and we're
shout out Grace.
She brought up an idea of stand-up, which she talks about a lot, and the idea of, like a good stand-up comedian, you're not like joke after joke after joke. It's just it feels natural, and it just exists there without, like, this is the joke. I'm about to tell you guys the joke. And so that's what you do with art, is really making it humorous, but in a way that doesn't feel like I'm trying to be humorous here and laugh right that. Like, it's really, it's neat to see different levels of that. But yes, the stand-up part is a huge part of.
I think it also comes back to a conversation of trust.
Definitely.
And when you're able to have like that ease of humor, it's because you trust each other, and you're not joking to be malicious, which I think often happens in a settler context, right? People are mean, but you're joking because you have to be a little bit humble about it too. I think there's something in that, like, and in ethics, there's ethics embedded in Native humor, especially, where you're joking because you care, and you're like, oh, don't take yourself so seriously, or don't stress about that so much. Like, I think that's kind of where that humor comes from as well. And right, which we then can think about in the relationship of creating exhibitions together. You talked about your trust between you and Thea, right? And I think in the same way, like, we need to have that humor so we know that we can trust you.
Yeah.
Because if I can't make fun of you, like, I don't want to hang out. Like, I'm sorry. Like,
and if you're not being made fun of, then the person doesn't like you.
Very much that.
Like, are you relevant?
That's my favorite part of my friend group, is being able to like make fun of each other, but in a way that I will also pick up the phone call if you call me at 1 a.m. and need to like vent, right? Like and the same in the being a good relative, I think,
Yeah.
kind of circles back to the way that we're able to have that humor together.
Yeah.
Humor is definitely love. It's an extension
Yeah.
of love,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
with Native people. So it's
Yeah.
really neat to share that with everyone and
Totally.
have them feel it too, where you're like, yes, like I got it.
Yeah. I love
Yeah, me and
it's
my
cool.
brother are both half Navajo. I'm half white, and he's half Spanish, Mexican, excuse me. And my grandpa would call me Biligana, which means white, and him Nakai, which means Mexican. And that's like when we were little, like, that's the white one, that's the Mexican one.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for making that so funny. Yeah. Lastly, before we get into like some like looser stuff, for each of you, your creative practices are really inseparable from your relationships and community. And for all of you, like we've talked about so much already, the line between your art making and your relationships are really blurry. So yeah, for you, like you're literally weaving in the stories, the objects of your family and friends. And for Clementine, your artwork is really deeply intertwined with your work as a researcher and an organizer. And then for Rachel, your work as a curator and an heritage keeper through the collection. So yeah, would you each be down to share a little bit more about that connection between your making and your work with materials and your web of relationships?
Yeah, we were just talking about this at lunch a little bit too. When it comes to working with the Gotchman collection and the curating, a lot of it is reaching out to people that are outside of the established art world, and in line with there's no word for art, it just means that people are making art and they don't necessarily consider themselves artists. And so I want to see that kind of art in the contemporary art world, because it's very much a very important part of what the future holds. And so it's forging connections with people that are working outside of the established art world, and inviting them to be a part of something that hopefully there's a large group of people in this room that are working towards having a safe space for those kinds of artists to enter and not be, that's a huge part of it. Because I'm definitely did not consider myself to be a part of the art world, and now I can be very like, no, it's a very important thing to have people from all backgrounds involved in making choices on what things look like going forward. And I'm definitely coming from a non-academic background, and I love being surrounded by people that do come from there and help as a collective. And it's not either or, it's definitely a beautiful thing. It's the same as talking to your elders. Like, elders are just people that know more than you. So it's beneficial for me in my position to bring lots of different communities together and have conversations about the art world that we want to see, which extends out to everywhere. That's me. Why do I end it every time?
Yeah.
That's it. Sorry.
Mic drop,
Is there
yeah.
something in Tlingit that you say that's like,
Yes, usually.
Yeah, right, like,
yeah.
I'm done talking? Yeah. It just sounds
It
weird in
is.
English.
And-
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't consider myself an artist, but I end up making. And I also I dance. I've been dancing since I was a kid, since I could walk. But I never think about those things because they're just a part of like my everyday. And so I think a lot of what in my like practice, it really is just what I want to make for other people, and how I want to exchange that. And I'm really, I feel like my strength is really in being in a supportive role. Like I really feel like a little sister all the time, where I'm like, tell me what you need, right? Whether that, do I need to sew something for you? Do I need to like go buy material, or do I need to publish something? Because not everybody's strength is writing. If I almost cursed, it sucks. Right, within a Western settler white supremacist context, right? Writing really sucks. But like, I can do that. I can endure that, and I think that's also part of that like exchange, right? I'm really interested in those kinship exchanges and whatever they look like, and I think that's my strength as an artist, and what I really like to engage with is that aspect of exchange.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like about like kinship too, and collaboration like with your ancestors in different ways of like still having space for them. So one story that I heard from one of my weaving teachers was that you're never supposed to leave a weaving unfinished, because then as you navigate your life, there's always something holding you back because you ignored it and you forgot about it, which is why sample looms are kind of looked down upon, because they're always showing the inside and the outside of the loom. But when I first started creating the really large loom work, to me they did feel finished, and I was like, oh, they're finished because now there's a space for my great-grandma who's in the exhibition on the wall, and one of her weavings is one of the ones that I'm dancing with in the video, but if she ever wants to visit, there's a space for her to weave still. So it's like, it's finished in the sense of like she's there, she's in it, and whenever she wants to weave or if she wants to move on to the next weaving, it's like, it's a collaboration between us. And then that's what I said, that my hands know what my mind was doing before my brain did, because I just inherently like gravitated towards like yarn as a child. And I remember my mom used to say that my grandma had holes in the floor because that's where she would put her spindle and would spin so it wouldn't like slide around on the floor. So she would dig little holes in the wood or the dirt, and then that's where she would put her spindle. But yeah, so I consider the kinship to also be in collaboration with those that have exist in a different realm than we do, or maybe they're just around the corner. Yeah, just hanging out. Yeah, they're here with us. They're always with us. Yeah. You can feel them in the room.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I would love, since you're all friends and fans and admirers, just to leave a little space if you had any questions that you've been dying to ask each other.
What's your go-to karaoke song? Did we ask each other that like 3 times today?
Yeah.
I did karaoke for the first time like
Wednesday?
the other night,
Yeah.
so I don't have a go-to song, and it was a very good thing though, because another person was like, you should just pick something and do it and not overthink it. And I think that's definitely, if I had thought about it before, if just whatever you get, you have to sing. Would be
That's
the
a good
best
challenge.
thing. It is,
Yeah.
but it would be the best thing to do because you're not overthinking it. And I think that's also good for art making, is just being like, oh, don't overthink it, just do it.
Just listen.
Yeah.
Give the material its agency to like.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Grow. Yeah.
Yeah, but you get Garth Brooks or something. Or I don't know, somebody that. But yeah, so maybe Garth Brooks.
It's shocker.
Brooks and Dunn.
Yeah. Oh my God, this was unexpected.
Oh, but maybe more serious questions about like medium. There's like next year I'm going to be doing a printmaking residency, and I don't know anything about printmaking, so I'm really excited because I don't know any rules. So I can't break rules because I don't know what the rules are. So like how do you guys feel about new media, or like are you ever interested in like diving into a new medium?
I'm definitely interested in diving into a new medium. I'm still loving paper right now, so I'm going to keep doing that. But there's definitely. I did paint at one time, so I think I will return to that in probably the next year or two. But yeah, I'm excited about that part.
Yeah, I'm really interested in quilting. The most recent exhibition at Racing Magpie, Melina Tubles did these really beautiful quilted like homages to her grandmother, which were really beautiful, and I felt really inspired. And I think there's a lot of really cool quilters that are doing amazing work right now, so I definitely would love to explore quilting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
For me, printmaking was one, but then also sound. So getting to perform with Ryan last night was really special because I don't know anything about that equipment or how it like loops, and so seeing his performances over the past, our friendship, I wanted to invite him to see him perform, and then Thea had the idea of us having an overlapping performance where he started and we performed together, and so it was exciting to experiment in that way of like letting him and design how the pedals interacted, and then we had that moment with the string, and so that was really I could never do something like that by myself, so like that was a new medium, and then it was a nice collaboration. I'm talking about you.
Yeah. Shout out Ryan Dennison. He's right there.
I have a question for both of you because I've recently been asked to do public art, and it's something that is well out of my wheelhouse, and it also involves another maker touching or making my art essentially, and in my vision. And I didn't see myself in that, but at the same time, it's good to challenge yourself with notions of what you didn't see your art doing. So would you ever consider public art? And what would that look like? Because that's I think that'll probably present itself. And what does that seem like something you would do? And how comfortable do you feel with other people making your work?
Yeah, that's a great question because I've thought about that a lot. When I did Tess Luki and Sarah Montross, I don't know if they're still here, but they work at Dave Cordova, and when Jeffrey Gibson had an exhibition there in his ziggurat in the monument, I was invited to perform on it, and then it had me thinking about the idea of a monument, and I was like, sometimes monuments are so, like, they stiff in the way of they are trying to, like, protect themselves from, like, the elements, like, oh, let's use this material so that way if it rains, it does, like, the rain can just, like, you know, go off of it. Whereas I think if I wanted to make something in public, I want it to be weathered. I would want it to be touched by like the wind and the elements and the rain, and then change. And so I don't know what that would look like. There was a sculpture there, and I don't remember the artist's name, and I don't think it's up anymore, but it was like a whole chain link fence of horsehair, and it would blow. And so that one was really inspiring because it was, you know, being affected. And so I think it would need to be something along the lines of that. And with fabrication, I've done it once when I went to Sydney. They fabricated a even larger version of one of my sculptures, and I felt it didn't feel like mine. Like it was like, I felt separate from it because I'm a maker, and I love making. That's the only thing I know how to do. And so I make with my family, and so having them do that and fabricate it for me, I did feel removed from it. But I think it would be different if like I was there making it with them. Then it would have had my handprints in it. But I don't know if I would do it again. I think it would need to be more collaborative.
Then so no Target collaborations for stuffed animals.
But like my in the exhibition, there's some beading that you'll see, and that's all my mother's hand. But then that's a collaboration between us. So that's different. But other side of the world, probably not again.
Yeah, I think public art, it should, you know, if it is outside, should interact with the environment. And I love that idea of like the art being weathered. And then I think a lot of my sister collaborates a lot with Layli Long Soldier and doing installations. And so the one that we have for the exhibition is a kitchen table, and each like quadrant of the table is the different things you would do at a kitchen table. And she wants it to be in a space where people sit down and do the things. You know, there's beadwork, and there's a section for kids, and there's a section for like reading and writing. So I think that way that public art could live and somebody could take with them, even if it's not physical. But I think that's something to think about too.
Yeah. I've always wanted to do a parade. Like that's a bit like that's public art. I think that would be so fun to like design a parade.
It would be really good.
I think that would be so fun. Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday, we're all gonna on the food together.
I'm there. Yay. Okay, well, I think we do have about 10 minutes or so for audience questions. Just project, and I can repeat. Oh, actually, we have a mic. Yay. And say your name.
Hi, everyone. Hi, friends.
Hi.
I'm Estifa. Thank you all so much for just such beautiful engagements and practices you're sharing with us. I'm so moved and struck by a couple of thematics that raised for me in relation to touch and the color pink. And so when I'm thinking of touch, you all really beautifully spoke to your relationships to it through some of your practices. Clementine, you shared that material is meant to be touched and handled and used and cared for. And Eric, you invite audience members to touch your own work. And I'm thinking of one of my favorite quotes by Octavia Butler, who writes, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you." And I'm also thinking about the ways that the art world often inhibits touch, how we're not allowed to touch in museums and galleries and exhibitions. And I'm a tactile learner, so this is always a problem for me. So I'm thinking through what it means when we're not allowed to touch, but subject to touch. And this is making me think of the discussion, Rachel, that you offered of the color pink. And the associations with femininity, and how in the Western world, or rather you shared that in Alaska you see the color pink in hide, in fish, in guts and blood, which I loved, and how that's viewed as taboo. Blood and guts is viewed as taboo in the Western world. And for me, this also is a mode of femininity, right? Femininity is so grotesque for me. Femininity is extremely monstrous. I fear for my life when encountering femininity. So I'm thinking of the pinkness.
The way you delivered that was amazing.
Oh, I'm so serious.
I believe it. I'm just
Thank you. I think we all should fear for our
well
lives.
done.
And I'm
said.
thank you. Well done. I'm thinking of the pinkness of flesh and what Hortense Spiller's writes of flesh, who writes of the ways that colonized and enslaved bodies have been reduced and degraded to flesh through processes of violence and strippage. And so I'm thinking about flesh as required for the making of the modern world and of the Western world, and the way that you, Rachel, in your paintings and work and art are beautifully and grotesquely turning it inside out, and making exterior that which is interior, right, through these processes of masking and unmasking and bending and contortion. And so I would love if all of you can speak to some of these practices and measures of both, protecting the sacred and making it legible to those who are not meant to know, and also as an exposure of the blood, the guts, the flesh, touch as a contamination almost of the Western world.
Yeah, I feel like touch is a really good part. There's so much to cover with that. When it comes to touch, it's really a matter of consent and safety. And I think that applies to all roles, but definitely with art, it's just the idea of touch, because I don't necessarily, don't touch my earrings, don't touch, don't touch a lot of the times and ask permission and consent. And I think that should be something that people are practicing on a regular basis. And I think that definitely when it comes to blood and guts and all of that kind of stuff, it's as a matter of safety. And that's really, when it comes to humor as well, it opens the door for you to feel safe and to talk about like heavy things and in relation to blood and guts and all of that, that's also that's always existed. It's there. And it's just a matter of shifting your perspective and seeing that. And so with the color pink, a lot of people are like, oh my God, of course, that's what that means. But it's amazing that, so the idea of pink and just covering up your period or all of these things that's what I associate with the Barbie feminism and that color pink. And so I'm like, no, I want it back. I want you to see.
Blood and guts.
It's blood and guts, yeah. And I love that though, because it's just perspective. It's just your head. It's in your head, and just so neat to an artist can expose something to people, and you can choose to go with that direction or you don't. And it's consent and it's safety, and whichever way you feel that. But I don't know if I answered that question.
That was
Hopefully
beautiful.
I did. Thank you for that though. Amazing.
Yeah. I was just gonna say one thing about touch too, like when I've worked with different institutions and preparators and curators see how I handle my work, and I can be really rough with it because I'm in studio, I know how it's dexterity, I know how strong it is, and then in performance I'm kind of banging and things are ripping and maybe falling apart, but I welcome the scarring. I think of our own body and the way we're touched by the world, whether that's through a marking and a tattoo or my kitty cat, where I roughhouse with her too much. Like, you know, my skin is scarred and bruised because of my existence, and the work exists alongside us. So what makes it precious to me is to not treat it as precious. You know what I mean? Like, for it to be handled and to be worn and to be thrown and to be carried and to be punched. Like, and I extend that invitation for the work, like you said, consent. So I
give permission.
I
You're
gave
giving
permission for
permission.
the audiences to enter and to explore in that way. And yeah, except the one room where everything's under a glass case. That's why the glass case is there.
Yeah, and I think building off of this idea of safety and consent, because consent can be taken away at any time, and because of our safety, and I think the settler impulse to create a hierarchy, so there's power and control over things, is what renders us flesh. But at the end of the day, like, our flesh is what we, at least from a tribal Northern Plains perspective, like, flesh is what we give in those, like, quote unquote sacred spaces. And I also challenge that use of sacred, because I think that's also within a white supremacist context, because everything is sacred because nothing is sacred, right? And it's all about safety. What are the things we're doing ritualistically, ceremonially, through our language that is about our safety and our well-being, right? How are we being a good relative? It's not necessarily about, like, the power over something. And I think that's the difference in what we do as creatives and what we do as good relatives is about consent and safety and well-being. It's not about power. And that's where we need to kind of take that out of the context, right? Like, and not to homogenize, like, the indigenous experience, but I think that's a lot of what I'm hearing in our conversation is about that relationship and the conversation we're having together with material, with beings, with the cosmologies. It's outside of what the Western white supremacist world sees as sacred, sees as a hierarchy, sees as having power over, and that we should be able to share with each other with mutual consent.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more.
Not her. See, that's that humor we're sharing.
I saw you look at her earlier. I was like, oh no.
It was always going to be.
I guess I was thinking about this earlier when you, Eric Paul, when you were talking about your encounters in the archive, and I'm thinking also about, like, all of your creative practices and the materials that you make and the lives that the material has. And with this conversation that turned towards consent and the haptic of touch, I'm thinking about what, if you could all share a little bit about your processes of consent with the materials that you create and the materials that you visit in the archive. Yeah, I would really love to hear that. Thanks.
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing that I'm always learning. Like I said earlier, I'm a student to language, to the Denebazad, I'm a student to the material, I'm a student to weaving. So it's something that I'm continuing to learn, but when I visited my first archive at Montclair Art Museum, it made me really uncomfortable. Again, seeing the baskets, and like, these baskets are supposed to be used, but now there's like that chemical, is it arsenic? I don't know, that chemical that they put in some archives and objects to like, so that way they last longer, but I'm like, it's now like possibly like poisoned or sick. And so that experience was really hard, but then when I went to the Hoffman Reffer collection, that one, because of Shondine's humor and wit, like really lightened the mood, and like, again, humor, like we were joking with the work, and so the work felt like a little bit maybe more awake or alive. And then so when I was interested in having some of those objects in the space, of course there's so much insurance on them, like loaning them is a whole process, but I wanted to kind of maybe demystify that in some sort of way. So like in the one archive box, there's 3 weaving combs, and then the one weaving comb was the one that I found that was in the sample loom. The middle weaving comb was from a samploom that I had at home where it's like real tiny, like on the inside, and the other one was actually a little clip. But I own those objects, but I wanted them to be in there to kind of like, again, kind of demystify like what is protected and why is my silly little clip now seen as equal to the other one when they're both all objects that are meant to be used, but that one's like a toy. I don't know. Yeah, with having it to be covered like that, I also was like, how can we have another layer of it? I don't know if there's an image of that room.
Let's see. This might be the one.
Oh, that's perfect.
This one?
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's one of the objects, but I was like, can we use the glass as material itself? And so I started writing on it, because we can't touch the objects, but maybe we can touch the box that's on it. And so that was one way of like trying to engage with me not being able to touch them, the audiences not being able to touch them, but we can draw on the box, draw on the glass. So I don't know if that answered, but that was some of my ideas around working with the archive and how it can, it's intimidating, but how we can be friends with it, I guess. That says my grandma's name is Effie, my grandpa's name is Edward. My mother's parents.
I guess a lot of the work that I do with the Gotchman collection is it's connected to my art practice as well when it comes to the overall idea of having our belongings returned to to their families. And so overall, like, it all works in the same way. A lot of times you'll see masks in my work because that's what people identify in the museums. Do you mind putting something up?
Oh, of course.
And so most people don't realize that there's a lot of Tlingit people existing, but they'll know that from a mask, and they know that immediately. And that's really important to me when it comes to connecting those two as a living person and returning that work. I know I'm off the subject of this, but in my head it like makes sense somehow. But for the idea of touching means that if we get that work back, then we know those weaving techniques and we can resurge that work. And so it's really important for our people to touch that work, not only because that's the life that it's meant to have, but also for it to continue on going forward so people can see what those weaving techniques are. And that's a part of consent and touch, and who, like, the idea that the museum has consent over who touches it is just one of those, you're like, So consent is in my work and on a regular basis when it comes to being touched inappropriately in any case, but also just like overall the idea of consent. And I know we're saying that a lot, but it's a huge part of I think I've like, one of the titles of my work, and it's not here, is She'll Be Soft When She Feels Safe. And so a lot of that is the same, where it's just the idea of touching and all of that is, consent is such a huge part of our culture as well, and interacting with the institutional world.
Yeah, I don't know. Dr. It's funny, she asked that question because she's an archive girly. I am not. I think that's the other thing of having community that can help you navigate those spaces. My sister loves collection. She loves going into the archive. They make me extremely sad, and often things follow me out of the archive, so I tend not to go in there. I'll go talk to people I'll go talk to the land, right? I like being out on the land or talking to people, and that's a different type of archive, and I think a different type of interaction. So I think that's the other part of, like, we can't do it all either. Like, at this point in this temporal spiral that we're on, it's like all hands on deck. We need people working with collections and working in the archive. We need people that are like in uncomfortable spaces and being able to navigate, whether that's the classroom or like the public facing part of a museum or heritage center or cultural center. We need people that are talking to the settlers and making them feel comfortable so that they give our things back or give us money, because we're still suffering capitalism. So I think that's the different aspects of, like, what archive are we visiting, what archive are we creating. It should be all hands on deck. We don't, especially as coming from such small, historically oppressed communities, like we really need everyone everywhere all at once. And we don't sometimes have the luxury to refuse in that same way that other communities can. I hope that answered part of your question.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, that was really beautiful. Thank you so much, you three, for
Thank you, Christina.
oh my gosh, of course. Thank you. You're all amazing. Love the realness. Thank you so much. I also just wanted to acknowledge the person who couldn't be with us, Grace Rosario Perkins. I know we shouted her out earlier, but the reason she couldn't be with us is that she is finishing up and getting ready to open her Whitney show. Again, Grace Rosario Perkins, her show's opening next weekend,
October
I believe.
18th,
yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, so please show
She's
up.
my cousin, support the homie.
Yes, show up for her. She's amazing.
Her work is
Yeah,
amazing.
she's like one of the people who made me want to originally write about art. So yeah, definitely look her up and go to her show. And then yeah, also we've got about 45 minutes until the next performance panel with Anthony Romero, Joshua Rios, Raquel Gutierrez, and the amazing Jessica Fremlin. So come back for them, show out, and check out some of the exhibition spaces in the meantime.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.